This is the brief on Newsfirst Digital.
A very good evening and welcome. This is the brief at 7 on Newsfirst Digital. I'm Ramesh, Irugalbandara.
And I'm Serala, Fonseka. We'll start off with a look at your top story. The sacred relics stored at the Nelligala International Buddhist Center arrived at the Polonnaruwa Galvihare today in line with a special Poson zone organized in the environs of the Galvihare.
The sacred Sarvagni relics and the relics of Maharat Theros were transported to the Atuparayaya Sri Bodhirukkaram Vihare in Dabulla yesterday. Today, following special religious observances, the relics began their journey to the Polonnaruwa Galvihare. The relics arrived at the Galvihare at around 3 p.m. and they were placed at the Sugandha Kutiya of the Galvihare by President Maithripala Sirisena. The relics will be put on display at the Pulatisi Poson zone till the 30th of this month for the benefit of devotees that flock to Polonnaruwa for Poson Poya. Newsfirst is the media sponsor of the Pulatisi Poson zone.
A forest fire has been reported in the 7th milepost area in Uduvara, Hali Ala.
According to a correspondent in the area, around 10 acres of land have been destroyed in the fire. The area is also home to an archaeological significant site. Area residents believe that the fire is an act of arson, as a similar incident was reported in the area around 3 days ago. Environmentalists note that such wildfires rarely take place naturally in Sri Lanka. They point out that this fire could have been caused by poachers attempting to hunt wild animals in the forest area.
A suspect has been arrested in connection with the murder of a 6-year-old girl in Sultipuram, Jaffna.
The suspect is a 22-year-old area resident. He was produced before the Mallakam Magistrates Court today and was remanded till the 11th of July. The post-mortem conducted yesterday at the Jaffna Teaching Hospital revealed that the girl was sexually abused, strangled to death and then dumped into the well. The girl was reported missing from her residence since Monday, and when her parents had searched for her, they made the gruesome discovery. The victim was Sivanesaram Regina, a grade 1 student.
Yesterday, the New York Times paper carried an article on Sri Lanka, the Hambantota port and China's stranglehold on the Sri Lankan economy. The article, titled "How China Got Sri Lanka to Cough Up a Port," says the transfer of the Hambantota port to the Chinese on a 99-year lease is the case of the most, and I'm quoting here, vivid examples of China's ambitious use of loans and aid to gain influence around the world and of its willingness to play hardball to collect, end quote. While highlighting the close relationship between President Mahinda Rajapaksa and China, the New York Times says that large payments were made by China towards the Mahinda Rajapaksa presidential campaign of 2015. Let's see what this report had to say.
The report says, quote, months of interviews with Sri Lankan, Indian, Chinese and Western officials and analysis of documents and agreements stemming from the port project present a stark illustration of how China and the companies under its control ensured their interests in a small country hungry for financing, unquote. The New York Times report says Indian officials in particular fear that Sri Lanka is struggling so much that the Chinese government may be able to dangle debt relief in exchange for its military's use of assets like the Hambantota port. While highlighting the close relationship between President Mahinda Rajapaksa and China, the New York Times says large payments flowed towards the president's circle as the 2015 presidential election drew closer. The report says, quote, at least $7.6 million was dispensed from China Harbour's account at Standard Chartered Bank to affiliates of Rajapaksa's campaign, unquote. With 10 days to go before polls opened on the 8th of January, around $3.7 million was distributed in checks. $678,000 to print campaign t-shirts and other promotional material, and $297,000 to buy supporters gifts, including women's saris. Another $38,000 was paid to a popular Buddhist monk who was supporting President Rajapaksa's electoral bid, while two checks totaling $1.7 million were delivered by volunteers to Temple Trees, his official residence. Most of the payments were from a sub-account controlled by China Harbour named HPDP Phase 2, shorthand for Hambantota Port Development Project. The New York Times says, quote, "Now the handover of Hambantota to the Chinese has kept alive concerns about possible military use, particularly as China has continued to militarize island holdings around the South China Sea despite earlier pledges not to." Unquote.
You can read up on the details of this New York Times article on our website www.newsfirst.lk, and also stay tuned for more revelations coming up tonight at 9 p.m. on TV1 on our primetime English News Bulletin. You can also watch the English News Bulletin right here on our Facebook page. Moving on with more local news, 2,322 suspects were arrested by the police last night and this morning following an island-wide police operation. Now, this operation was launched from 10 p.m. to midnight yesterday and again from 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. today. A total of 432 suspects who had warrants against them were arrested by the police during this operation. 5 suspects were arrested for possession of firearms, 650 arrested for drinking and driving, 531 persons arrested for possession of heroin and other drugs during this 4-hour raid launched by the police. A total of 14,070 police officers had been deployed for this special operation. Moving on to international news now. Malaysian police said yesterday that the total value of jewellery, handbags and watches and other items seized from the compounds of former Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak totaled nearly 275 million US dollars. Staying in news overseas, US Ambassador to the United Nations Nikki Haley said yesterday that the primary focus of her visit to India was to solidify the relationship between New Delhi and Washington. Haley, who is on a 2-day visit, made the comments after visiting several sites in the Indian capital of New Delhi. She said her visit aimed at exploring multiple ways to take Indo-US ties forward. Haley's visit comes days before US Secretary of State Michael Pompeo and Secretary of Defense James Mattis is to host Indian Foreign Minister Sushma Swaraj and Defense Minister Nirmala Sitharaman in Washington for the inaugural US-India 2+2 dialogue on July 6th, which will focus on strengthening strategic, security and defense cooperation. Daughter of Sikh immigrants from Punjab and the first Indian American to serve in a cabinet-level position in any US presidential administration, Nikki Haley last visited India in late 2014 when she was the governor of the US state of South California. And that's a wrap of the brief at 7 for tonight. As always, send in your thoughts and comments in the comments section below. I'm Ramesh Irugalbandara for Newsfirst Digital.
And I'm Serala Fonseka. Good night.